All right,
Okay.
good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started to talk about the 2024 renewal process. We set aside 90 minutes, but we don't anticipate it'll take that long. But if there are questions that you have, we're here to answer them. As brief introductions, my name is Katie Broughton. I took over for Mark as the Director of Authorizing in September. And then on the call with me is Danny, who you are all very familiar with. And then Melissa's also in attendance as well. We're here today to talk just a little bit about the renewal process. Your charter contracts are set to expire, so to speak, in June of 2025. And so we'll start the renewal process so everything's done and ready to go by the time the one contract ends and the new contract will begin. So this is the 2024 renewal process, but the contract doesn't actually end until 2025. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We just have a couple of slides to review stuff. The slides do have some dates and some links that we'll look at of just some examples from last year. And then Danny's recording this, and so tomorrow he'll send out the recording as well as a copy of the slides. So if you don't get everything written down, just know it's coming your way tomorrow. So to start off with, this is just kind of a general overview of the process and the timeline. There's some pretty key dates here. By June 30th, we, the SPCSA, will send you a performance report. We'll send it directly to the board chair and the school leader. The performance report will include overall academic performance, financial performance, and organizational performance from 2019 to 2020 through essentially the end of this school year, because that's where we're at. It won't include the academic performance for this school year yet, but that data will be available and be a part of the ultimate renewal report in the fall. So I will directly send that to all of you by June 30th. We're working on them now. They've got a lot of detail in them, but our goal is to make those as easy for you as possible to then just re-put back in the report that gets submitted to us. By September 1st, your school must submit a notice of intent to renew your charter contract to us. Be a very simple letter to our board, to us, and I've got some links to show if you are looking for examples of that. And then the renewal application will go live October 1st through October 15th. We'll talk a little bit about what that will look like as well. It will be due October, it won't go live, but it needs to be submitted by October 15th. And then in November or December, we will make the final recommendations to the SPCSA board about whether or not we're recommending renewal and the length of the charter contract renewal we're recommending. So we can recommend 3 to 10 years of a charter contract renewal. So to start with the performance report, this will, like I said, the SPCSA, we will send this to you by June 30th. It includes a summary of the performance of the charter school and then an identification of any deficiencies. If you are on a notice of any kind in any of the frameworks, that would be included as well. It will also include all of your site evaluations throughout this charter contract time period. It will include requirements for the application for renewal of the charter contract. So just like a pretty broad outline of what is required for the renewal. And then the criteria that we will apply in making the determination. So last year we had 3 schools that were up for renewal, a single campus, a multi-campus, and a statewide virtual. So if you click on any of these, it won't show because I don't think I'm sharing my screen.
It looks like it's coming up now. Oh, you had pulled it over.
Got it. Yep. So this is for Honors Academy. They were renewed last year, but you can kind of see the details of their report, an overview, the school performance, 4-year grad rate, just not applicable for them. But you'll notice their report is 130 pages. It includes also the site evaluations and then a copy of the framework results as well. So you'll get a pretty detailed report there. Theirs is 130 pages, but then the second example that we have is, I think, Pinecrest.
Yes, Pinecrest.
And because they're multi-campus school, there's going to be a lot more data. So their report grows to about 564 pages. But same thing, it'll include site evaluation reports and then academic data, an overview of the campus, the board members, all those things. And then this statewide virtual is the same. So it'll be a pretty detailed report with lots of data. We've tried to organize it in a way that you can use the data that we give you to then include in the actual application. But we should get those to you by June 30th. Then you're required to submit a letter of intent to us, just saying that you intend to renew your charter. We were asked that it be written on the school's letterhead and submitted to Epicenter. You would include like the plan, facility, and address, the grades served during the current charter term, grades served for the upcoming charter term, and then it should be signed by the board chair and school leader. One note here, which I'll go back to, is an expansion of grades beyond the current contract will require an amendment that's separate from the renewal. So I'll talk a little bit about that later, but just note that. So again, from last year, we've got a couple examples here. This is Honors letter of intent on their letterhead, information about the school. Pinecrest is the same. And again, if you have multi-campuses, just include information for all of the campuses. And then the renewal application. So we'll finish the renewal application probably July and send it out to everybody. And then you'll have to have the completed application sent to us by October 1st to October 15th. So the window will open October 1st, and then the deadline will be the 15th. Within the application, you'll include an executive summary, which is the mission statement, key design elements, and proposed changes, renewal application, summary of performance, written narrative, calendar, schedule, academic plans, organization viability, fiscal soundness and plan, and then some additional information. One of the pieces of that is the agenda and draft minutes of the board meeting that your board voted to approve the application. So we do need to see that it's been approved by the board. And then I think there are a couple examples here. Yep. So again, it's pretty straightforward. And the one this year will look pretty much the same as next year, but it gives the directions here. Will also be included in the performance report. It gives the timeline, an executive summary of the school, goes into academic plans, etc. Pretty straightforward inclusions here. Same with the multi-campus. The one thing I do want to make note of is proposed changes. So the renewal process does not contemplate changes to the charter contract. So for example, if your school's a K-8 school and you decide that you want to open a high school in a year, that would require an amendment that it would have to be contemplated outside of the renewal process. So you would have to do that kind of separately if you're proposing any material amendments to the charter contract. So the renewal process essentially says we're going to renew as is. And then if you want to do any sort of material amendments, we would do that sort of once the renewal has been approved by our board. So that can be like a little tricky, and if there are big things that you're contemplating, please let us know so we can support guidance. But just know any material changes to the charter contract would not be included throughout this renewal process. So again,
Katie, if I can
Danny, go ahead.
jump in real quick on that too. So one of the things that we saw last year and some of the previous years is schools, when they're submitting their renewal application, contemplate growths in amendment or in enrollment caps. And what we will base all of our enrollment cap data on is the previously approved caps that have already been submitted. So if like Pinecrest was a good example from last year, they had a slow growth of like Pinecrest Springs. They had opened a new campus. And so those numbers that were approved as part of that amendment, those are the numbers that are going to go there into the upcoming charter term. So any sort of growth as well as adding grades or anything like that would also that all needs to be included as part of an amendment. So we're going to be basing the enrollment caps for the upcoming charter term based upon what has been previously approved via the initial charter contract or the renewed charter contract and any sort of amendments that occurred over the previous charter term. So that's one thing that I did see last time, is that there was some kind of growth built in on things that didn't quite match what had been previously approved. So just be aware that anything as far as enrollment cap goes is going to be based on your most recent charter contract.
So those are kind of the big pieces for us. And I'll just go back before I go into the questions as a general overview. So by June 30th, we'll send you the performance reports. It'll probably be earlier in June. We'll release the charter renewal application, the finalized application, probably in July, and we'll send it out to you guys directly. And then by September 1st, we have to have a notice of intent from the board and the school that says, yes, we would like to renew. And then the application itself will be due between October 1st and October 15th for final recommendations to our board in the November or December meeting. And then that you're in the clear and the charter itself will end June 30th, and the new contract will begin July 1st. Are there any questions, things you're wondering about, anything we can clear up for anybody today?
I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Regarding that June 30th performance reports, are we going to get star ratings by that time, or?
So it won't include the star ratings for this current school year. It will include essentially all the data that we have up until June 30th. So the star ratings will be part of the final recommendation memo we give to our board later in the fall, but the data isn't available by June 30th. So this school year's star rating won't be included in there.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Gabe. Sorry.
Oh, thanks. Gabe Shiver with Signature Preparatory. Real quick, just on the material amendment, is a change to mission, vision, values, even if it's just one or two words, considered material? Meaning, would we need to make that change outside of the approved window, or could that be considered in the actual renewal?
I think, Gabe, for anything mission and vision wise, if you want to chat offline on that and kind of see if it's a few words, then probably not. But if there's a pretty substantive change to any sort of the mission or the vision of the school, then that probably would require an amendment that would go before our board. It just depends on, what words are being changed, right?
I could follow up with you on that.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think if you clarify that, then we can help just make sure and provide better guidance.
So for everyone, as far as like the submission points go, this will all be done via Epicenter. So in August, you'll see an Epicenter submission come up for your notice of intent to renew. That's not a window. That needs to be submitted no later than September 1st. And then following that, you'll see an Epicenter compliance requirement for the renewal application that will be due October 15th, but you can submit that, anywhere between October 1 and October 15th. So everything will be done via Epicenter except the performance report. The performance report will be sent out via email by us directly to the school leader and the board president.
Question, Danny. What are the current amendment cycles? How are your amendment cycles running right now? Because there's definitely some things that we're going to want to put in, but I also don't want to rush it and try and jam it in. So what's your cycle?
So we're currently in a regulation kind of workshop mode, along with looking at the cycles, and one of our hopes is that, we're going to probably get rid of the cycles and move to a more just walking amendment. Like, you reach out to us, talk about what you're planning on amending. We're trying to get some more focused applications based upon the proposed changes, get that to you, kind of have an initial meeting and discuss like when that would be submitted and then when we would hear it before the board. So for amendments, yes, there currently is in regulation the 2 cycles, the spring and the fall, but for anyone who's been kind of watching our board meetings, you'll see that we've had amendments every meeting pretty much. So any sort of contemplation of amendment type things, just reach out to me and I'm happy to set up a call and we can kind of talk about details. But for schools that are up for renewal and amendments that are contemplating any sort of growth or additional grades or additional facilities, a lot of that stuff is going to be handled most likely after the school has been renewed, because it kind of gets a little awkward if we're hearing an item for a school that's up for renewal prior in that like last year. So something to think about for all the schools as they're in this kind of last year of their charter term.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously looking 2 to 10 years out. So we're trying to plan for that. And so an amendment after the renewal would be fine. It's not like anything has to be changed right away, which leads me to my next question, which is how is it that you determine the charter term?
So we'll use essentially the performance framework results over academic, financial, and organizational. The academic will weigh the most heavy in the decision, but those will be kind of the 3 factors that we use, and then we'll let you know before we take it to our board what we're recommending.
Right, that makes sense, that obviously there has to be some type of a rubric that you're going to be following. So do you have something concrete where you look at an index score in certain things, and if you hit certain numbers or metrics, then this is going to be the recommendation?
It's a fair question. No, we don't, but we'll look at kind of the overall performance and then make a determination.
Okay, so is that something that is negotiable?
So Kate, like I'll use this past renewal cycle kind of as an example. I think we're comfortable saying that everyone on this call today, like it's going to be more of a matter of term length as opposed to renew or not renew.
Right.
And so with that, like if you're 4 and 5 stars over the course of your entire charter term, then we're going to be looking at the higher end, 6, 7, 8. If you have notices or there's, the most recent academic, we're in that weird spot where we've had a pause on data for so long for academics that the renewals for the past, not this most recent one, but the previous ones, we didn't really have, everything was paused. So it was a little awkward at that time, but with two years worth of star rating data, if there's no notice and stuff, then you can look to being more towards the higher end of the renewal. If there is a notice or if there's a 2-star at one of the campuses, like, especially for our multi-campus folks, that's where, we will meet with everyone again. Basically, once the renewal applications are due, right around that time is when we started to talk with the schools this past year to kind of finalize those term lengths.
And that's partly too why, even though like the performance report that we send won't include the final academic ratings for this school year, that will also play into effect into that final determination.
But that will be something that we will be given before you submit it to the board.
Yes, for sure. I think you'll get those in August, September, and then this will go to the board November, December.
With this past renewal cycle, Rochelle, like basically what happened was around October, we met with each of the schools to kind of give them an idea of what we were going to be recommending term length wise. So everyone was well aware before the renewal hearings at the board meeting. Everyone was on the same page going into it. So you'll know pretty well in advance of what the term length we're recommending is going to be before that November/December board hearing.
Perfect. Thanks, Danny.
Are there any other questions or concerns we can kind of address now?
Katie, did you want to go into any of the modifications we contemplated on the renewal application and some of like the academic data where we've tried to kind of hopefully give the schools a hand in some of the renewal application process?
Yes. So what you'll see in the performance report, so the performance report will give you a summary of your data. And then the application asks you to provide a summary of the data as well. And so to kind of try to break down some of the duplicative processes, what we've tried to do is essentially give it in the same format that we're asking for it back. So hopefully that makes it a little bit less time consuming to kind of use what's already provided to you and then just include that in the application itself. It's not a perfect system and we're going to try and work on that too, but we want to try and make it sort of as simple for you as possible to gather all of the information. And so we've made it comprehensive and almost identical looking in format for what we give you and then what we ask for in return. So our hope is that that makes it a little less time consuming on that part of it and you can focus on like the narrative and the executive summary and those pieces. But we do know that it's a big data lift as well.
Just like the original application, are you putting recommended links for the different components in the renewal?
Like
2
recommended
pages, 5
word?
pages, you know what I mean? Like word counts or page numbers or whatever, you know what I mean? So that we have an
No.
idea of what you're looking for.
I don't think we have that, but generally it's not, each section will be pretty, like, they're not super long, but we can add that if you'd like. We haven't finalized it yet, so we can add that.
In the past, the last couple of years, you know, we've kind of given guidance of like 5 to 10 pages for academic and, you know, 3 to 5 pages for financial or, you know, but we're not going to be counting words as far as this is more than what we need. So yeah, I mean, really with the renewal process, like any renewal process is determined based upon the past performance, not really much of like future items. So, you know, I think what's helpful for you all for the renewal app is to kind of just lay out maybe the school's future plans. But as far as like the determination of the renewal itself, that's all based upon the past performance of the school.
I have no further questions right now.
Well, like I said, Danny will send this out tomorrow. If there are questions, feel free to let us know. I'm trying to go backwards. That's our contact information if you have them. If you want to stay on and ask some specific questions, we're happy to try to answer them. But if you feel good and you're prepared, then look for a performance report from us in the coming months, and then we will work on the next steps of the letter of intent and the actual application to renew. So thank you for joining us. And
the only
Danny, go
other
ahead.
thing I'd add is just for those who are thinking amendments, you know, I know that the renewal is going to be step one in the whole process, but, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to meet, and just even if things aren't being considered for this school year or the next school year, you know, I'm happy to meet, to just kind of talk with all of you. If there's things that you're wondering that, you know, would require an amendment, or when an amendment may go before, just definitely reach out early and often, because that I think helps both our side and gives you all clarity on timelines so that you can get planning on future aspects of the school post renewal.
All right. Well, if no one has any other